Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give it a few minutes for everybody to get logged in today. Okay, like we've got some people logging in. All right, well, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to today's webinar, The Future of Talent Acquisition and Retention. I know that is a topic that keeps many of us up at night. I'm Stacy Bigelow. I'm the CEO of the Advanced Group, and I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We will save Q&A for the end of the webinar, so feel free to add that to the chat or the Q&A section. I will be keeping an eye on those when Tom's presenting. I would like to introduce Tom Erb. He is our guest speaker today. He's the president of Talent Resources and one of the staffing and recruiting industry's top subject matter expert. He's nationally recognized in the recruiting world as a speaker and an author. I've known him for a number of years, and we are very fortunate to have him share his insights with us today. So without further ado, I know you didn't come to listen to me. Let's welcome Tom Erb. I'll turn it over to you, Tom.
Thanks, Stacy. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, whether you are joining us live or joining us listening to this recording. So as Stacy talked about, it is a hot topic. It's cooled off a little bit just because we have seen a downturn in demand this year. But I get some data to show you that's going to be short-lived, and we're going to be right back to having this talent shortage. And unfortunately, it's actually going to be worse than it was before because we've had a bunch of people still exiting the workforce. And the good news is that you're on one of these sessions and you can learn what to do that your competition for talent isn't doing. So let's jump right in. I will say that the slides are available. Just reach out to your Advanced Group contact. And if you don't have a contact at Advanced Group, then Stacy can give you the email that you can send to ask for these slides. We're going to cover a lot of stuff, and then we are going to have Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, put that into the Q&A area and we'll monitor that. So, all right. So one of the things that we hear about all the time is we're being ghosted. You know, we've all heard that term that these candidates are ghosting us. They're not showing up. They're not returning our calls. They apply to a job, but then they never talk to us. Or they don't show up to an interview, whatever it is. There's a big disconnect between why we think we're being ghosted and what the reality of it is. And so what we hear over and over again is that enhanced unemployment is creating incentives to stay home. That people still are not in the workforce. We even hear people talk about, well, after COVID, that people aren't getting back into the workforce. There's a very small percentage that's not in the workforce, but pretty much everybody is back. The vast majority, 99% are. The pandemic created barriers to work, and that was absolutely true, but we've gotten well beyond that. But we still hear that. We still act as if that is continuing on. The biggest one that we hear is that candidates are unmotivated, they're unreliable, they're disrespectful, whatever it is. Well, I've been doing staffing and recruiting for 30 years, and 30 years ago, I can tell you that we were saying candidates were unmotivated, unreliable, disrespectful. That really hasn't changed. Certainly, behaviors have changed some, but the reality of it is that it isn't these different things. Why they're really ghosting us is because there aren't enough people to go around. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the data. We're only focused on the most active candidates. So yes, we've got a talent pool out there, but the way that almost everybody recruits is focused on a very, very small part of the talent pool. I call it the shallow end of the talent pool. And so that is limiting us to not only a small percentage, but not always the best part of the talent pool either. They don't like us. It's not that they dislike us, but we don't really do much anything to get them to actually like us. So we'll talk about that as well. And then we tend to be too slow in our process, sometimes really too slow. And when we are all out there competing for talent, the fastest people win over and over and over again. So we'll discuss that. And we're going to talk about what are the ways that we can counteract this? How can we be more competitive out there? How can we have a competitive advantage over our talent competition? I hear this term fair share. And I've been hearing it for a while now. I just want to get my fair share. I want to post a job on Indeed. I want to get some applicants in. I want to pick out the best few to interview, and I want to pick the one that's best for me. That's a fair share mentality. The problem is we haven't had a fair share for a long time. So let's take a look at this. When we talk about fair share, this is the Federal Reserve Economic Development Job Postings report, and this comes out on a regular basis. And you can see, I took the numbers, if you can see my cursor over here on the left, from the end of the Great Recession. So beginning of 2009, as we were going through the second year of the Great Recession, we started to come out of it. You can see the job openings were around 2 million openings. That gradually went up all the way to the point where we got to the pandemic. So this gray line, this little thin gray line, is when the bottom fell out of the economy for a few months. Then we recovered and we ended up growing again rapidly. So if you look at this here, you will see that before the pandemic, we were actually on a little bit of a decline before the pandemic. We were still at an all-time high or near an all-time high of about 7 million open jobs. Bottom fell out, the pandemic, we quickly shot back up and got all the way up to over 12 million open jobs. We have declined quite a bit from that, but even now with the decline, we are still at 8 million open jobs, which means that would be a record in pre-pandemic levels. So we still have a huge amount of demand out there. The problem is that we don't have the supply. And this right here is the reason why. And some of you have probably already seen this before, but if you haven't seen it before, it's something you need to be very familiar with, because this is going to shape our lives for the rest of our lives. Whether you are 20 years old, whether you're 60 years old, it is going to shape the rest of our lives, both professionally and personally. So this right here, this blue line is showing the US fertility rate over the course of several generations. And that black line right in the middle there is what we call the replacement rate. Pretty much all economists agree, and economists don't agree on a lot of stuff, but they all agree that the replacement rate is 2.1. That means that for every woman in the US, they need to have 2.1 children in order to be at replacement rate level. Okay. And so that 2.1 is where we need to be. You can see with the baby boomers, we were well above that. It's why we call it the baby boom. We were up to almost 4. Whereas once we got into Gen X, sometimes this is called the baby bust. Now we drop down well below replacement level, down to about 1.6. And we have been bouncing at or below replacement level now for the past 50 years. So we have not been replacing ourselves. And now what we're seeing is those baby boomers keep getting closer and closer to retirement. We're seeing them retire at a rate now of about 10,000 a day. And so we're seeing a huge decline in not only institutional knowledge, because these are the most experienced people, but just in sheer numbers. And even though over the last 12 months or so, we've seen a real slowdown in demand, and you saw it on that previous chart, what it's masking is the fact that these baby boomers continue to retire. And when we start to get through this year, and we always see slowness during a presidential year, we always see it leading up to it because there's uncertainty about what direction the country's going to go in. This is obviously the weirdest one by far. And so there's additional uncertainty around that, what's going on. But we see kind of these companies pumping the brakes, and it has a trickle down effect with that. We've also seen that interest rates and inflation have caused companies to slow down on investments. We've seen private equity backing out. So we've seen a lot of slowdown in demand, right? All of that is masking the fact that we got all these baby boomers that are retiring, and we don't have the people to replace them. Here's something that's even more concerning, is that if we take a look at Gen Z and after, we are rapidly declining on the birth rate. It is down to about 1.6 again, and it is on the decline. And you add to that most people are waiting longer to have their first child. It used to be you'd have it around your early 20s. and now it's it's into your 30s in many cases. So we're spreading out those generations. So there's a lot of things just on a macro level that are causing us to have this shortage and are going to continue to have a shortage for the next however many decades until something changes. It's the reason why we go to a restaurant that's half empty and they go, oh yeah, we have an hour wait. It's not because they don't want you. It's not because they don't have the physical capacity. It's because they don't have enough people, particularly people who tend to be in service industries, who tend to be younger generations. So we got all of this stuff going on. What that means is that when we come out of this period of uncertainty and we start to have demand again, it's going to be even worse than it was before we went into this period. And so we need to be prepared for that. And we are starting to see a lot of data that is showing that we're on our way out of it. We're actually, if you look at Lightcast data, Lightcast is a think tank that focuses on the labor market in the US. They're showing the last 4 months, we've had steady increases in the number of job postings, which is an indicator that we're starting to have more and more demand. And you're also starting to see a little bit of an uptick in the government numbers to support that. So drought is here to stay. Speaking of Lightcast, if you look over on the right-hand side, there are 2 ebooks that I strongly recommend if you have not already read, that you go out onto the internet and you download them. The first one is Who is Going to Do the Work, which is which talks about skilled labor. It talks about service industry. It talks about healthcare. It talks about all these different industries that we are going to have major talent shortages with. And then Bridging the Gap in Our Labor Force is a follow-up to the demographic drought. The demographic drought came out right about at the time of COVID, when it was starting about 2020, and was talking about this impending labor shortage that it had started. And then Bridging the Gap was a follow-up to it. I just saw in the past week that Lightcast is going to be coming out with a follow-up to Bridging the Gap in Our Labor Force that is going to come out in the next couple of weeks. You can Google it, find it. It's free to download. They don't bother you if you fill out the form. Really good information. But some of the things that they talk about are the fact that birth rate is continuing below replacement level. We know that from that slide. Baby boomer retirements are not only happening, but they're actually accelerating. They keep going faster and faster. And now we're starting to see Gen Xers that are starting to early retire. They're getting up into their early 60s. Early retire, semi-retire, going and doing something else that they want to do versus something that they have 30 plus years of experience doing. We're also seeing that newer generations on average are working 14% less than baby boomers and Gen Xers. And that is by choice, because what they did was they basically sat there, and as they were growing up, they could see their parents and their grandparents working their butts off and keep talking about work-life balance, but then they would work 50 hours a week or more. And so what we're seeing with newer generations is they're going, I don't want to live like that. And they are intentionally working 14% less than previous generations. We're also seeing that employees are leaving the traditional workforce for all sorts of other opportunities. It's never been easier to be an entrepreneur. It's never been easier to have gig work, to do multiple part-time jobs. There's a trend towards people, rather than having one full-time job, is to have multiple part-time jobs, which, if you think about the nature of our lives now and how we pick up things in such bit sizes, we've got TikTok and we've got Instagram and we've got all these different ways, YouTube, where we are consuming things in short little bits. It's no wonder that our attention spans have dropped to the point where people actually don't even want to have one full-time job. They want to have 2 or 3 part-time jobs, or they want to have a part-time job, a gig job, and do some entrepreneur work, whatever that might be. So there are all sorts of different ways that people are still working, they're still getting income, but they're not doing it through that traditional employer-employee relationship that all of us on this webinar need to have in order to be successful. So what do we need to do? Well, to consistently win, we need to do a few things. First thing is we need to be more attractive to our candidates than to our talent competition. And don't confuse your talent competition with your competition. Your competition, yeah, you may be pulling from the same talent pool, but there are lots of other companies that you don't compete with for business that you're competing with for talent. So you really have to think about, who am I competing with for the same talent? That's who we need to be more attractive than. We need to be more aggressive than our talent competitors, which means we need to be faster. We need to do more. We need to put more focus on what we're doing. We need to be more purposeful. We need to have a plan, a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. Posting on Indeed and posting and praying was what we call it. That's not a strategy either. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. We need to be more committed to retaining our employees. The average tenure in the workforce is still around 3 years. That means a third of our workforce turns over every single year. And in blue collar and service, we're talking closer to like 18 months, which means 2/3 of our workforce turns over every single year. If we can move that needle, the dial, just a couple of months, then that does big things for us as far as productivity and not being able to have to just replace people all the time. So let's talk about why they don't like us. And again, it's not that they dislike us. It's that they don't have an opinion about us at all. We have not done anything to really get them to like us. So ask yourself some questions here. If I can get a door. There we go. Am I recruiting or am I just processing? When I go out there and probably throw a job on a job board or social media or whatever it is, and I start to get applicants in, or people apply through my website, how do I approach that? Am I actually trying to get them excited? Do I have any kind of script that I'm using that whoever's doing it in my organization is using to get them excited? Or am I just going through the motions, trying to screen them in or screen them out? Most companies are doing the latter. Is my job posting appealing? There is absolutely no excuse for not having an appealing job posting these days, and I'm going to show you how we can do that. How did they feel after our initial call? So ask yourself this: when they get off of the phone, when they have their spouse, significant other, parents, children, friends, whoever it is, goes, "What was that call?" What do they say? What do you think they say? Do they go, you know what, I applied to a bunch of jobs and that was just one of them. I may not even go. Or do they go, that was actually a really cool opportunity. I'm excited to see what the next step is. That's what we want to get them to. Most organizations don't even put thought into doing that, which is a great opportunity for you. If you do put thought into it, you can get ahead of the competition. Why would they want to work with us instead of the competition? Keep in mind, if you're posting a job out on Indeed or any of the other job boards, they're not just applying to your job. They're applying to dozens, sometimes hundreds of other jobs. So how do we stand out? Why would they want to work with us instead of the other ones that they're talking to? And as we go through the process, first of all, we want the process to be as short as possible while still making a good selection. But how do we keep them feeling engaged, valued? How do we create demand on our side so that they want to work with us rather than entertaining other offers or ghosting us, falling off? So the strategy is not surprisingly, be likable. We want to engage every single applicant with enthusiasm, respect, and value. One of my old managers many years ago says, treat every candidate as if they have an A. Let them prove you wrong. Don't treat every candidate as if they have an F or if they have a C and they have to prove to you that they're worth an A. Start with the intent that they are quite possibly going to be your next star employee, because they might be. And that's probably how you got your star employees, and that's how you're going to get your next star employee. And make every interaction positive and memorable. If there are multiple people in the organization that are involved in the process, multiple layers of interviews, whatever that is, everybody has to do this, because it just takes that one person who's kind of a jerk or just somebody you go, I'm not sure if I really want to work with them, and they'll go somewhere else. So we need to make sure every single person treats it this way. We are selling them on our opportunity. We are not screening them out. The days of screening out are gone. Not to say we don't still pick people that are qualified, but we need to be treating them with enthusiasm, value, and trying to get them pulled in to be interested in the opportunity. All right, let me ask you a question. We got a new restaurant that opens up in the market. They post an ad out there. Tell me if you would eat here. ABC Cafe is looking for customers that will spend their money to eat food at our restaurant. Exclamation mark. That's exciting. At ABC Cafe, you will read a menu and select items for consuming, eat your meal within a reasonable amount of time, review and pay the bill. Are you excited? Are you setting up the reservation yet? The ideal customer must possess the following: a friendly and positive attitude towards all staff, appreciation for the opportunity to dine with us. I won't read all of them. Generous tipping and 5-star Yelp reviews are a plus. Customers that meet the above criteria can expect to receive a chair, a table to eat on, menu with items for purchase, full range of utensils, and complimentary water with their meal. Nobody would go there. This is ridiculous, right? As an advertisement, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is all about what they want. Well, guess what? That's what we do every time we post a job. ABC, I gotta move my screen a little bit here so I can read it. ABC Cafe is looking for experienced servers, exclamation point. At ABC Cafe, you'll be responsible for serving each guest courteously, quickly, and efficiently. Have a sincere, positive, pleasant, and enthusiastic attitude while following our teamwork philosophy. It's all about, well, this is what you're going to have to do. This is what we expect. The ideal candidate must possess the following: the ability to stand and exert fact-paced mobility, should be fast-paced. That's their typo, not mine, for periods of 4 hours, blah, 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 blah. I love the last couple of sentences. ABC Cafe offers competitive pay, benefits, and consistent hours. Some overtime may be required. Candidates that meet the above criteria can apply through our website. Do not call or stop in. So basically what we're saying is, if you meet this criteria, you are allowed to apply. And by the way, I'm kind of a jerk. So why would this appeal to anybody? And I pulled these off of different jobs that are posted on Indeed and other job boards out there. Go out to Indeed, take a look. 99% of job postings are still this way. We are starting to see more that are getting better because they have technology to be able to create them using AI and some other tools. So there are some that are getting better. We're still seeing 99% of them that read like this. It's a wish list for what we want, not a marketing tool to draw the people in. We are acting like this is 2008 and we have thousands of people out there to choose from, and we want to weed them out so that they don't waste our time. So this is where we're at now. This is what your competition is doing. If you're not doing this, you're already ahead of everybody else. So great job. Keep at it. Do more of it. And we're going to talk about how to do this. If this sounds anything like what you're posting, we're going to talk about how we can fix that. But first, I want to talk a little bit about job boards. There was a study done a couple of years ago by an organization called Career Plug, and you may or may not be familiar with them, but they are a company that helps Fortune 500 companies and other companies with their recruiting strategy, and they collect a lot of data on this. And what they found around job boards was that the average job posting received 866 views, which sounds great, right? However, only 23 of those 866 people actually applied for the job. And that results in about a 3% view to applicant conversion rate. Why did only 23 applicants apply to that? Because every job sounds like the one that we did before. There is no reason for them to apply to it. And so the active job seekers are just going through and applying to everything that they can. And that's probably what a lot of those 23 applications are. But you had 866 people that looked at it. 843 of them decided that they were not going to apply to that particular job. Let's take a look at something else. So they looked at job postings versus applicants over 2000 and 2021. And in 2020, there were 137,000 jobs posted from clients that were clients of Career Plugs. In 2021, there were over 200,000 jobs posted. During that same period of time, the actual applicants went from 7.5 million down to a little bit over 5 million. So what we saw was that there was a 49% increase in job postings, and during that same period of time, a 30% decrease in applicants. And that's what we're seeing over and over and over again. I work with staffing and recruiting firms all day, every day. We see this across the board, that the ROI on job boards has increasingly gotten less and less. And the reason is because everybody goes out there. It's easy to do. These job boards have made it great user interfaces, really easy to go out there, really easy to interact with. They also have pushed people to apply to jobs more and more and more, but we've reached this saturation point on the job boards. We reached it, you can see, several years ago, and that's why we're seeing declines in job postings, because we're just not getting the ROI. But now that things are getting busy again, like I mentioned, the last 4 months, we've seen an increase in job postings. So people are back to using the job boards, even though we can clearly see it's not very efficient. But there's more to this too. If we look at on the right-hand side, there's 100 people here. So if this represents 100% of the talent pool, 13% of the workforce is actively looking for a job at any given time. So about 4% of the workforce, 4 to 5% of the workforce is unemployed. About 8 to 9% of people that are working are actively looking for a job. Those are the people that are going out to the job boards on a regular basis. That is what our pool is. So we're already eliminating 87% of the workforce for the most part. Now, you do have what we call semi-active job seekers, which makes up about 25% of the workforce. And they're the window shoppers. They're every once in a while going out, spending a little bit of time scrolling through jobs on the job boards, but they're not really applying to much of anything. They're particularly not applying to any of those boring employer-centric jobs that we just showed earlier. So we've already eliminated 87% of the workforce because we're focused on job boards. There also have been studies that show that if you're not on the first page of the job board, there's a 50% drop off in applicants on page 2 and a 70% drop off to page 3. So we need to stay on page 1, which doesn't last very long, especially if a bunch of people are sponsoring that particular type of job. And then, of course, we have about 3% of the views that result in an application. So what ends up happening is we think we got all these candidates when we're out on job boards, but the reality of it is that we really have access to less than 1% of the talent pool when all is said and done. And there's other factors that make this even worse than 1%. I can't take a little fraction of that person there, probably just show his arm or something. We hope our job posting matches their search keywords. So if we have anything kind of unique, then we may not get the people that we want to search for our job and find our job to actually be able to find it. We hope we time our posting right with their job search. We hope that it's on there when they happen to jump on there, because they're not spending all day. The good ones aren't. We have lower quality applicants in that part of the job pool, because the reality of it is that some people who are unemployed or actively looking for a job are doing that because they're having their own personal challenges. They're not productive. They can't, they have bad attendance, whatever that might be, or they just like to hop around. It's where our greatest competition is. We have higher ghosting rates there because of all of those factors, and we have higher fall off rates during the process too, because the reality of it is they've applied to your job, you get a hold of them, you talk to them, start to get them into your process, they're still getting recruited. They're still on there. They're still applying to jobs, and they have other people that are reaching out to them. So having job boards as a strategy is not sustainable. However, it doesn't mean that we don't have our job postings. We have our job postings on our website. We do have job boards as part of our strategy. We can do social media. We can do all sorts of different things. We still have to have the job postings. But what we want to do is focus more on candidate-centric phrases instead of employer-centric phrases. So an employer-centric phrase is the ideal candidate must possess the following skills. We are looking for candidates that can do this. Are you hardworking and dependable? By the way, there's never been anybody who has ever said, no, I am lazy and unreliable. It's always, I'm misunderstood. I have bad luck, those types of things. We're not screening anybody out by saying, don't apply if you're not hardworking and dependable. And then lastly, must be able to pass drug screen. That's fine to have it in there if that's a requirement. It doesn't have to be leading with that. I've actually seen it in all caps. Must be able to pass drug screen. Do not apply if you cannot pass a drug screen. So, we can put that down a little bit later, because that's also not going to deter the people we think it's going to deter. On the other side, we want to have more candidate-centric terminology. Are you looking for the next stage in your career? You have plenty of time for your personal life. Have you always wanted to do this? You are the type of person who enjoys this. What we want to do is paint a picture that creates some sort of an emotional response. Yes, an emotional response. And I equate it to a realtor that takes you, if you're looking for a house, they take you into a house, they walk you around, and they go, can you see yourself sitting here at Thanksgiving with your family? They're trying to create this emotional attachment to it. We can do the same with a job. Job is also a major life decision that we can create an emotional attachment to. We're trying to paint a picture of them picturing themselves better off in our job than where they are right now. So that's what we want to focus on. So let's take a look again at this job posting for a server. Are you a passionate and experienced server who thrives in a fast-paced and vibrant environment? Look no further. ABC Cafe is eagerly searching for dynamic individuals like you to enhance our team. Why ABC Cafe stands out, gives some selling points there. Why you love ABC Cafe gives more selling points. By the way, it's covering all the same stuff that was in that previous job posting. Ready to elevate your career? We encourage you to apply through our user-friendly website. We're not telling you don't stop in. Sound like a jerk. Become a part of the ABC Cafe family and let's create extraordinary dining experiences together. Sounds much, much better. I will tell you that this was done by taking the previous job posting, putting it into ChatGPT and saying, rewrite this and make it more candidate-centric towards somebody who's looking for a job. Make it more focused as a marketing piece. I ran it through twice. Ran it through once, came back with some stuff. I gave it some additional prompts. It came back with better stuff, and then I put it here. Now, normally what you would do is run it through once or twice, give it additional prompts, and then you'd edit it a little bit. I took it and copied and pasted it. So this could actually be even better than it is, but I wanted to show you how within 30 seconds of using ChatGPT, I can take that employer-centric, boring job posting that's trying to rule people out to create a candidate-centric job posting that is meant to be more of a marketing piece. So I talked about this a little bit before. The recruiting strategy for most companies boils down to job boards. Post and pray is what we call it. You post a job and you pray that the right person applies to it. And that is not a sustainable strategy. What we need to do is have job boards be just one part of an overall strategy. You know, this is an extremely important thing that we have the right types of talent in our organization to help us reach our goals. So we need to be purposeful and strategic about this and really have a plan for going out and hitting that other 87% plus of the talent pool that we're not hitting with job boards. So job boards are part of this strategy, but we also want to look into grassroots recruiting. Grassroots is getting out there in the community and being visible and being represented as an employer of choice, something that we want, where people want to come and work for us. Employee referrals is always a great place to get employees from. The best employees tend to come from referrals. They tend to stay longer. They already have a sense of community because they know the person who referred them. And so they have somebody already there in common with them, all sorts of benefits. And yet we don't spend enough time, effort, and money on employee referrals. Social media, just being out there visible, the places that our candidates are out there, and then doing networking, just getting out into the community and into the business community, or just overall professional networks, whatever it is that you're recruiting for, and getting to know people and having a reputation and being able to find people out there. So we want to have this holistic recruiting strategy that we're focused on. The next piece that we want to talk about is, okay, what do we do once we've got them? And what we find over and over again is that most companies are extremely inefficient in the selection, hiring, and onboarding process. So we've gone through all this effort and money to get the candidate to apply, only to let them slip through our fingers. And it's like trying to hold water in our hands. The longer we hold the water in our hands, the more it slips through. Same thing with candidates. The problem is that they tend to be the best candidates that we lose in the process because they have lots of options. And so we need to take a look at all sorts of different parts of our process. Our candidate sourcing, which we've already talked about. Our application process. Is it quick? Is it easy? Is it intuitive? Is it mobile? All of those different things. the lag between the application and the interview. How fast do I reach out to them from the time that they apply to the time I can get them to interview? How fast do I reach out to them from the time they apply just to have a conversation with them? And what we find is that the fall off rate is significant after about 2 hours. And most companies don't reach out to applicants for 1 or 2 days, especially if they apply on the weekend or in the evenings. And so our competition, if they're more efficient with that, they're getting out there faster than we are. Talk more about that in a minute. Background checks and drug screens. I'm not saying you don't do them. What I am saying is that times have changed. Have our policies kept up with the times that have changed? There's different changes around marijuana, around background checks, those types of things. Are they still relevant? A lot of times our background checks and drug screens, our policies are based on something we did years ago. And in many cases, they're based on what we did during a previous downturn where we had too many applicants and we had to start looking for ways to weed people out. Same thing with skills testing. Is skills testing relevant to the job that we have? Is it still relevant to the job? Maybe it was done when that job was doing different things and now it's not needed as much and we're screening people out that we shouldn't be. How efficient is our interview and selection process and how positive is it through that whole process? What's the lag from acceptance to start? We want to get them in as soon as we identify that they are somebody that we want to hire. What's our onboarding process like? What is it? Is it a welcoming process? Is it a process that gives them confidence that they made the right decision? We want to go make sure that we do that. And then retention. What are we doing to retain people once we get them in the door? What kind of culture do we have? What kind of incentives do we have, or other types of things, other types of perks do we have that are going to make it more attractive for us than for them to go somewhere else? So last thing I want to talk about a little bit is just the strategies for retaining employees. So we have these employees that we want to retain. Obviously, we want to increase the amount of time that we have people because that's less people we have to recruit, especially if we're also growing. You hate to be bringing in people in the front door and the back door is open. And so we want to be able to, shut that door, or at least make it harder to open up. How do we retain employees? How do we also become more attractive to non-traditional employees? We've got a growing number of people that we talked about are looking for non-traditional work. They're looking for part-time work. They're looking for ways that they can be an entrepreneur, but still have a job where they can get benefits. We want to be able to attract and retain as many people. If we can provide them something that other companies cannot or are not willing to do, then they're going to stay with us, as long as we're not treating them like jerks. So the first thing is, do we look at breaking up the 40-hour work week? We talked about earlier that we have a lot of people looking for part-time work. We also have found that in many cases, there's studies that have been done that part-time workers tend to be more efficient. They tend to be more productive per hour. There's a lot of wasted time in a full 8-hour day and a 40-hour work week. There's studies out there that say out of an 8-hour day, most people only work 2.5 to 3 hours, that there's other stuff is going on, in between stuff is going on. So if we have part-time workers, they tend to actually be more efficient. We also, in a lot of cases, can get better value out of part-time workers. You may have somebody that normally would be well overqualified for the position that you have, but because they want to have part-time work or flexibility, then they are willing to take a job that they're overqualified for, doesn't pay as much, but they have that flexibility that they need or they want. We can use scheduling technology if we need to. There are plenty of professions out there that have been doing this for decades. We see call centers, contact centers that have done this forever. We see scheduling in retail and fast food and restaurants, and we see it in hospitals with per diem nursing and CNAs. So it can be done. Just because it's not regularly done in the profession that you're in or in the industry you're in, doesn't mean that it can't be done. You just got to get past the whole mindset of, no, I need people to work 40-hour work weeks. Go remote. Now, obviously, A lot of positions can't go remote. That's fine. But what I also find is in a lot of cases, we have companies that we work with where they go, well, because these positions can't go remote, we don't think it's fair that the other positions can go remote. I'll tell you what we're settling on as a society is more and more hybrid opportunities. And so we have people that are instead of people being fully remote, you're seeing news articles about people getting pulled back into the office to work more. We're seeing that a lot of companies are settling on a hybrid role where somebody may be in the office 3 days a week, out 2 days a week, or it may vary, whatever. And there's more flexibility on that. If we can provide that flexibility, it's something that others aren't willing to do. And so we have less competition for our talent. And lastly, beef up our benefits. Take a look at your benefits. Are you offering not only the benefits that are universally looked for, like healthcare, but also take a look at your time off benefits. Are they up to date? Have they changed any? Have they changed with the times as far as how people work? Evaluate benefits for part-time workers. If we have somebody that wants to have 2 or 3 part-time jobs, or they want to have a part-time job, they want to have a gig job like Uber or DoorDash or something, and they want to have this entrepreneurial, they have their own business on a website or something like that, they may want to have benefits, healthcare benefits and other for part-time. Most people do not offer benefits for part-time. So if you can offer that, that creates a benefit that they can't easily go and find somewhere else. And then also take a look at different incentive programs that reward employees for working more hours. Are there ways beyond just overtime? Are there ways that we can do that? Uber went to this, and we have seen a real shift. They provide all sorts of incentives and contests and all these things for picking up additional rides. And because of that, their average driver has significantly increased the number of trips that they do. Can we apply something similar to what we're doing as well? The other thing to take a look at is, are there non-traditional benefits that we can offer people, especially if we're looking at millennials, Gen Xers? Sometimes there's other benefits that are more important. There may be, pet insurance, gym membership. There could be all sorts of different things that we take a look at that are non-traditional but are of value to those employees. So I'll wrap it up a little bit. We'll have time for some questions here. So if you have questions now, put it in the Q&A. Go ahead and do that. But what we want to do is really focus on developing an ongoing talent strategy. Focuses on holistic recruiting, not just job board centric, but job board as part of that overall recruiting strategy, building candidate demand, and eliminating friction in our selection process, creating unique job and company features that drive both attraction and retention. So that's it for me. That's a picture of me the last time I was in a tie. And you can send me an email if you'd like, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're looking for a copy of the presentation, Stacy can jump on and give you contact information to be able to get that. And let's open it up for questions.
Great. While we wait for some questions, you made a really good point. When was the last time you went through your application process? That's a fascinating exercise to do. We do that frequently in our world, being a staffing provider, but that's definitely a really good exercise, because you might find some glitches in there, or sometimes you might find that your way is not mobile friendly. And I think that that's very important to work those bugs out and do that on a fairly frequent basis, because things change fast.
Yeah. Over 50% of people are applying via their mobile phone. And so we need to take that into consideration. I think most companies at this point have a mobile optimized website where people can fill out an application, but you still see applications that are multi-step, multi-tabbed, asking for a lot of information up front. And studies show that you get 70-80% fall off rate when you have more than 5 questions. And those 5 questions really they're really 5 fields. So it's, first name, last name, and a few others, and then the ability to upload your resume. That's that's really all it should be. We can go back and get more information when we get farther along.
Right. You just need to contact them, and you need to contact them quickly. So
Yeah.
a couple of questions that came in, Tom. In do you see the benefits to adding pay and benefit information at the beginning of a job post in effort to catch those applicants' attention?
Yeah, it's a great question, and more states are going towards requiring it. So it's coming. It's going to be there. The applicants are used to it. They want to see it. There is data out there that shows that you get a much higher application rate if you list either the rate or a range. Listings, the different benefits within the job posting are definitely important, because here's what we're looking for. When we're posting a job out on a job board, we're not trying to attract the unemployed and active applicants. They're going to apply anyways. So that's not what we're trying to do, is get those window shoppers, those semi-active applicants that are out there, and they may go out and spend a half an hour and not apply to anything. We want to attract them, and we attract them by showing that there's an upside and that we have better benefits. We have whatever it is our selling points are. Now, some people go, well, you know what? We just can't be very competitive on pay. And then you really need to have some other stuff that's going to attract them. I'm a big believer in purpose-driven jobs. And I'll give a quick story of that. I had a friend of mine, actually was my next door neighbor, was the general manager for the Columbus Crew. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. And the Columbus Crew is the soccer team. And he was the very first general manager. And he came to us when I was working for a staffing company and wanted us to find some people for him, but he didn't want to pay very much. And my comment to him was, you're not going to find anybody at this rate. And he goes, oh, yes, I will. You tell them they're going to be working for a professional sports team, and we'll get applicants. And sure enough, he was right. We got a ton of them. There were people that specifically, they were willing to give up $1 or 50 cents or whatever it was at the time to take a job in a professional sports organization. There are people out there that if you have a more purpose-driven organization, nonprofit, or you're doing something that has purpose, or you have a culture that has purpose, in many cases, people will take less money. People do not just, there are some people that'll switch jobs for a quarter, but most people actually don't. And so if we can be relatively competitive on pay, even if we're on the lower end of the market, if we have other things that can attract them, that's what we really need to lead with and get them to apply.
Right. We talked about once you have them, you've got to keep them. So that's important. Companies are really focused on DEI. They're focused on their company culture, flexibility, making sure that we're going to retain those people that we worked really hard to get in the first place. So you mentioned pet insurance, and one of our attendees wants to know if you have some other example of non-traditional benefits that you've seen.
There's one of the things I would look at is, can you be creative with flexible schedules? I mean, that's a big thing right now. The traditional 8 to 5. People need to have more flexibility in their schedule. And of course, I know we've got a wide variety of people that are on this call. We've got people that are in industrial environments, manufacturing, warehousing. We've got people that maybe call centers, where you got to have people there for certain periods of time. But even if you can have more flexibility in that, to let them get away and take their kid to a doctor's appointment and do things like that, that would be something that I would take a look at. Long-term incentive plans are another area to look at. Employee assistance programs are another area. Different types of insurance that are non-traditional. Off the top of my head, I can't think of other ones other than pet insurance, but there are different ones. So I think you got to be creative, and you got to talk to your employees about what it is that they would like. And in some cases, that stuff is at no cost to you and may go directly to the employee. In other cases, it might be there's some cost, but it's worth it.
Right.
So yeah, that's how I would definitely look into different things. Ask your employees.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. That's great. So another question for you. Are you seeing the younger generation of candidates move away from job boards and gravitate more towards social media for job searches? This person is curious on how to best attract the younger talent, especially with the replacement level at its current state.
Um, I don't know that we're seeing them go away from job boards as much as we're just seeing job boards not be effective at any level. And there are still some positions where they can be effective, but in many cases, like I talked about earlier, just showing the data, the combination of there are less people on there that are applying, and there are more and more employers that are posting jobs out there. So just the ROI in general. We do have, there's data. In fact, I've got a slide in another presentation that talks about social media usage by generation. And what we're seeing is that the newer generations, the millennials and Gen Z, and I'll talk about that in a second too, particularly Gen Z, are going more towards the Instagrams and the TikToks and those, and not with the Facebook and some of the other ones, those types of sites. So you do have to be aware of where your audience is going on social media. We do also see a lot of them that are going to LinkedIn, not necessarily that they're that active, but they are being taught a lot of times, especially if you're looking for college graduates, they're being taught in college to get onto LinkedIn. So we're seeing that. That's one of the quickest areas of growth for social media sites is with recent college grads, people in their 20s. We're also seeing blue collar has increased significantly on LinkedIn, and also healthcare significantly on LinkedIn. It used to be considered just white collar professional, but LinkedIn has really picked up in all those areas. So I think you just have to have a multi-pronged approach, and you got to reach out to all different people in their environment. You got to think about where their environment is. So we've also seen success with festivals, with even sometimes with conferences or concerts. A lot of the non-traditional ways to recruit.
Well, that brand awareness is so important. So you have to really be cautious on your reviews, as a company.
Absolutely.
How are your reviews? Are your reviews, awful? Well, then you have to do something to change that, because that brand awareness is very important, and people do look at reviews for sure.
Yeah, and particularly your younger generations look more at reviews. Absolutely. Yep. Yes.
We have another question. How often should a company be reviewing their screening requirements? So that could be on whether it's, I'm assuming, skilled, background, drug, you name it, just overall screening. Is there a recommendation there?
I mean, I would take a look at them at least once a year and just see if anything has changed. And what the reality of it is that in many cases we'll go into a company and we see that they have overly strict screening processes that were developed years and years ago, and they just don't apply anymore. And maybe they didn't even apply when they were created, but they were trying to find a way to kind of whittle down the applicant pool. Now we're trying to get people in. We're trying to be inclusive, not exclusive, as far as getting candidates in. We don't put a job out on a job board and get 300 applicants now. And so some of those were created back then. We really need to take a look at who are the underserved in the workforce, who are the underrepresented, who have high unemployment. And I'll tell you, the areas that we see are formerly incarcerated, has a really high unemployment rate. New college grads, like right out of college, particularly if you're looking at degrees, non-business degrees, non-science degrees, if you're looking at more of your liberal arts, that kind of stuff, they have a 10% plus unemployment rate. And it's because people don't want to hire without experience. but it doesn't mean they don't have great behavioral traits and potential. And then the other is people with disabilities. People with disabilities, in some disabilities, have 70-80% unemployment or higher. So are there ways to work with people with disabilities? I just saw a statistic last week that I'm going to probably botch the number here, but somewhere around like 70% of people with autism are unemployed. It's a huge percentage, and it's because the traditional screening method does not work well for somebody that's on the spectrum. So there's lots of different ways to take a look at them, and sometimes our screening processes rule people out that we shouldn't be ruling it out.
Right. You know, one thing that we've done over the years is really, in my team hears me say this frequently, is reimagine the role. So if someone leaves, and you might think, oh geez, I need to replace this role, when it allows you to really reimagine what the job is, what really needs to happen, and then you might be able to open up the doors to some other avenues where you normally wouldn't. So that's been very helpful in our world over here, because it has created a lot of opportunities for people to move into different roles.
Well, especially with the pace of technology, regardless of what type of position that you're recruiting for, they're probably impacted by technology. And technology is evolving so fast at this point that a lot of these jobs either have changed in just the last few months, or are going to change, or should change. And so you got to take a look at that, because people's roles are different. And so that's something that you got to take a look at.
Great. Well, Tom, we don't have any more questions right now. I want to thank you for sharing all of this with us and our guests on the call. We appreciate your time and talent. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to your advanced group. We would love to be able to talk to you more.
Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, everybody.